And we're back for I don't know. I always wonder if I should like start the conversation saying like we're back for another episode of NOM presents the Creative Conduit. I won't do that. Um, I'm in way better spirits than I was the last time we sat down and had these conversations. But I'm more excited. This one, I guess we're a day late. There was a lot happening. My youngest daughter had her curriculum showcase and she was a Jaguar, and that was exciting for multiple reasons. One, uh, usually when there's like overtly creative or obviously creative stuff that needs to be done in my household, like I I don't want to say naturally, but most times I take the lead in that. But for some reason, my lady took the responsibility of doing like all the creative stuff, and it was fun to kind of watch her. I don't want to say in her element, but I can say that because it looked natural to her while she was doing it, and that was interesting. Um, and it was like everything from the idea phase of it, figuring it out, the ideation phase of it, execution of it, and just kind of just stand like almost like a fly on the wall. Just a part of me, like initially, I wanted to kind of step in, but then she didn't need me, and so that was interesting to to watch and kind of just see come together. Um, and it came together well. She did some customization to the costume um, and she improvised when she needed to, and it came out actually pretty cool. So I'm high key proud of her. Um, but yeah, I figured I'd just tell that little story because I mean we're all about creativity on this particular on this channel or this podcast. But I want to start off like we always do with some mindfulness, just kind of being present in this particular moment. Um, and we always do it with 10 breaths and just focusing on the breath starting now. And yeah, now that we're here, we always kind of follow that up with a little brain teaser. And today's is what don't you actually have to hold to break? What don't you have to hold to break? And I'll let you sit on that for a little bit. What I want to talk about today is just this idea of um, excess creativity and excess. Um, like the early stages of this podcast, we kind of talked about the idea of finding your creativity, knowing how to tap into it, um, make it accessible, readily available. And this is something that is a work in progress. We continuously work on this. We even talked about the idea of it's uncontrollable, right? And it's sometimes it can be erratic. So there's all those things, but as with anything, it's like you hit this stride or this momentum or this moment where it's almost like you're glowing, and then creativity just comes from everywhere. Sometimes when you're not even trying, it's just there. It's ever present. It's overflowing. Um, and what do you do in those particular moments when there's just excess amounts of creativity? And I think this is an interesting topic because for one, a lot of the times us creatives, we feel as if though like every idea we have is the idea, um, is our greatest idea, and we fear everything about it, losing it, not seeing it come to fruition. And a lot of the times, because when it comes in excess, I think the first thing we do is kind of try to make notes of it, and we keep it. I'm big on execution, and I think one of the things, if I'm conscious in this moment, it's like every idea I have, I want to pursue it. I want to see it come to life, and I've learned that it's good if I only had an idea a year, or an idea every 6 months. But ideas come to me so often, and first I used to write them down. In hopes that I can get back to them. So there was just like this backlog of ideas. Other times I'll think about it, I'll smile, and then I have to force myself to forget it, because I don't want it to just sit and take up space, and knowing that I don't have the time or the resources to get to it. Especially, I think sometimes we forget that as much as we have unlimited mental capacity and memory and all of that, it's like at some point I think it can get full, right? Just like a memory card. I remember I'm a fan of Jay-Z, and one time I was listening to him talk. He's notorious for this idea of not writing down his lyrics. It's almost like it just comes off the top of his head, but that's not how he was in the initial phases of him making music, creating art in that particular way. So what he said he would do is, when he would leave home, he'd take a notepad, and every idea he had that came in the form of song lyrics, he would write it down. And that's what he would do, and he would add books of lyrics that he could use for songs. And then he was leaving the house so frequently, there were times when he forgot his book or his notepad, and he had to figure out a way to record all of these ideas, and he started to just memorize them. And he would memorize, and that became habit for him. So he would store all these ideas in his head, and that's so whenever he found himself in a booth or a recording studio to actually record, he just went off memory. So it wasn't like he was freestyling, meaning just grabbing it out of nowhere. It was just pulling from his mental Rolodex and then regurgitating the things that he memorized. But then he had a line that said, I done forgot more than you ever learned, because eventually that memory bank gets overflowed, or it overflows, and you start to lose some of these ideas. And that generally happens to a lot of us, because we sometimes become idea hoarders, and unused ideas, eventually they just fall out of the space that we keep them in. And that's one of the conversations I want to talk about today. It's like, what do you do with that excess creativity besides just try to keep it for yourself? Do you offer it? Do you share it? What does I think it's always good to understand what form your creativity is manifesting in or taking shape in, and it'll help you to better answer this question. So we were talking about like Jay-Z before, and everybody knows him as this artist, this rapper, but he's known for his writing abilities, and then he started to write a lot for his peers. So the when creativity would come and he would write music, there was a lot of the times where the music he wrote wasn't even for himself. So the excess creativity he had, he funneled it and he gave it to somebody else, and it showed up in the form of writing credits, right? So he would write and create reference tracks for other artists, and some of the works he's done are more famous than others. But every time I find out the artist or a song that he wrote that wasn't his, if I close my eyes and I listen to the words, I can actually hear Jay-Z rapping it, because his style, his flow is so unique that you can easily pick it up. So, but that's in a writing capacity. I've always said, like from a musical standpoint, I've always said my creativity takes shape in the form of technology and innovation. So it's not one of those things where it's like an innovation is birthed from a problem. So it's not like I could just randomly send innovation to people or organizations. I have to truly understand the problem. So when I find myself in those states of creative overflow, I go looking for problems, and it could come, and I usually find them. I look immediately, like, oh, my friends or my family, are they experiencing something that maybe I can leverage my skill to help solve the problem. And sometimes it's not problem, and it's not always problem in the sense of a bad thing. It's more like opportunities. One of the times I can think of is, I remember one time I was, I don't know if I've said this out loud, but I'm based in New York City. And there was a time where I was traveling to Long Island. I was listening to learning Spanish, this audiobook. I don't want to say I'm the furthest from fluent in Spanish. I understand Spanish enough to survive, and I've spent a lot of times kind of taking these refresher courses to kind of make sure that if I ever needed my Spanish to survive, I can. But I was traveling to Long Island, and I was I took a train there, and I was listening to this Spanish audiobook, learning Spanish. And it made me think about, well, one, it was well put together, and it was serving its purpose. I'm from Belize, and not only I'm from Belize, I'm Garifuna, and the Garifuna people are scattered across Central America. The diaspora exists in the U.S., but the language is slowly, I want to say, dying, for lack of a better word. And I'm saying that only because there's not enough support to extend its life. And I remember in that moment, while I was listening to this Spanish audiobook, I thought about the Garifuna language, and I thought about my mom, who was an educator for about, at that point, maybe 40 years. And I had this idea. It's like, why couldn't she do an audiobook, learning Garifuna audiobook? And I don't know if I called her while I was on the train or when I got to my destination. I remember giving her a call, and I said, "Hey, like, what are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, my mom has gotten to the point where, like, she's retired now, but she spends most of her time with her grandchildren. So she was at my brother's, looking after his kids, or spending time with them. I think that's a better way to say it." And I was like, "Hey, you want to come to New York for a couple of weeks and do an audiobook, a learning Garifuna audiobook?" And she was like, "For sure." And I booked the ticket, and I said, it's going to happen in 2 weeks, and we're going to be as creative as possible. And we're going to build this thing, everything from the designing to the recording to the mixing and mastering and packaging and everything, in this 2 week span. And we were able to accomplish it. And as much as if it was for her, and it was her audiobook, and it's she created the content and everything. It was a creative journey for me too, because I was involved in every aspect of it, and it filled my creative cup, and it gave me an opportunity to extend my creativity, this excess creativity that I had, to other people or to someone else. And that is one instance. But I always find myself, like, I reach out to friends or family when, like, I hear or see something about them, and I feel like I can contribute to it. And that's generally how I extend myself, or offer my creativity, the excess of it, to other people. from a professional capacity, I told you about the NOM, the idea of NOM, this creative conduit, where we are creativity and innovation as a service. When I have excess creativity, I reach out to my clients and I figure out, hey, is there an opportunity, or is there a need that we can kind of collaborate on in order to solve a particular problem, to innovate. And then I also teach. And I was having a conversation with a student of mine, and he had asked. We were just talking about this whole idea of like entrepreneurship and startup, and I think I had mentioned to him that not a rut per se, but just and I spoke about this in a previous episode, that sometimes, because I am so knee deep into my startup, and I'm doing the repetitive, redundant, business related side of owning a business, and less of the creative side, that it wasn't as fun anymore. But having an opportunity to be around these students who are building, like who have amazing ideas, and they're in these creative process, and then to have me just be a part of that is refreshing. So I can inject a lot of these creative ideas that I've had, or that I have, into these students, and then kind of work in tandem and parallel with them. So they're doing me a service and a favor, as while I'm hoping that I reciprocate that. And those are the things that I those are the ways that I generally offer my creativity when it comes in excess. And I don't know that it took me a while, because I don't know that. So let me pull back a second. For a lot of creative people whose creativity takes shape in art, it's almost like they don't share their creativity, or give it away, because they feel like that piece of art could be their magnum opus. It could be like, this is their defining piece of art, and if you give it away, then it's no longer yours, and somebody gets to reap the benefits of it. I don't believe in that. I believe that ideas are meant to be shared, and because there's a huge execution aspect of it that determines whether or not this becomes successful or not. And then success is relative too, so it's not. There's nothing definitive about it either way. But a lot of artists, and I use that term loosely. A lot of artists are scared to share their art, and I feel like creativity is at its best when it's free flowing. Innovation, I believe in democratizing innovation, and then just spreading the opportunity to innovate. So I've never seen the sharing or the exchange of ideas as a problem, or I've never necessarily like fed into the negative aspect of it. Not to say that it doesn't exist. I just feel like we live in a better world where creatives have the opportunity to share their ideas, and be the spark for somebody else. And because we made a hip hop reference earlier, there's this famous Tupac quote that it just popped in my head, when it's like, he said, "I may not change the world. My hope is that I inspire the person that does, though." Whether it's through his words or his lyrics or his music, that he's able to inspire the person that actually changed the world. And that's how I see creativity, right? It's like, it's this thing where you don't always have to be the vessel that brings it to life. You can be the trigger, though. You can be the inspiration. You can be the catalyst. There's different vital components of the creative process, and we can argue which one is more important, or which one takes precedence, which one is higher priority. And then we can also say they're all equal, and that I guess depends on who you ask. But I think ultimately, art has to come out. It is a disservice to any and everyone if we create amazing art and we don't share it, or it doesn't become public. Early on, like maybe episode 2 or 3, we talked about the selflessness associated, the selfishness and the selflessness associated with creativity. And creativity and art and innovation has shown to impact many of lives. And I think, the reason it was able to do that is because it was public. It became public. It was shareable. It was accessible to the people who needed it. So when we have it in excess, I think there shouldn't be a question. There shouldn't be any reservations of actually sharing that creativity, because the world needs it. The world needs to hear it, to see it, to feel it, to experience it. And we shouldn't hoard it selfishly. Ideas come, they go, and your best idea is your next idea, not your last. And I think if we approach it in that particular manner, we're not too concerned about giving away our best work. And I think if we trust and we're confident in our abilities, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities in the future to make beautiful and wonderful art from your creativity. So I think that's it. I want you to think about this idea of when you recognize that there's an excess of creativity and what you ultimately do with it. Like, I will always lean on the side of, hey, share it. Don't keep it. The more you give, I think the more you receive. And if you give in abundance, I believe you're gonna get in abundance. So that is my feeling. I'd be interested to hear your take on it, and whether or not you want to, like, you care to share your creativity. Yeah, I don't want to extend this out further than it needs to be. But I did come across as I was kind of doing my daily, like, just research on just the idea of, like, creativity, because again, this is a huge part of my life. This is my everyday existence. I stumbled upon a book. It's called The Diary of Anais Nin. And I took a snippet from it, which kind of speaks to a lot of what we're talking about here. But in it says, "You must not fear, hold back, count, or be a miser with your thoughts and feelings. It is also true that creation comes from an overflow. So you have to learn to intake, to imbibe, to nourish yourself, and not be afraid of fullness. So you have to embrace the full and then share it." And it also said that it amazed me that you felt that each time you write a story, you gave away one of your dreams, and you felt the poorer for it. But then you have not thought that this dream is planted in others. Others begin to live it too. It is shared. It is the beginning of friendship and love. And I think that is extremely relevant. I think there's some anecdotes. There's a lot to take from it. And it helps with this theme of just this idea of sharing your creativity when it comes in excess. Yeah, so no more idea hoarders. Just spread the love. And with that, I want to go back to the brain teaser that started us all off. It was, let me see if I remember. It was, what don't you have to hold to break? What don't you have to hold to break? A promise. You don't actually have to hold a promise in your hand to break it. As always, go be great. And I'll see you next week, hopefully.